Uh, yeah, I've been missing the heck out of Shoestring the past couple weeks, and I was always apprehensive of when we were together to put a camera in his face, because he made his own videos, and I didn't want him to even remotely think that I was like, that's the reason I liked him. And I always felt weird. In fact, the couple videos, the handful of videos I did make with him, I always asked his permission. And in fact, the one that I love the most, and I haven't been able to watch it since he passed away, but the one that is like 28 minutes of priceless shoestring commentary or whatever it is. He was the one that was like, well, let's make a little video of you and I talking, and it's pretty accurate as far as, there might as well not have been a camera there. Every time I was with him, that's kind of how we conversed. And yeah, I've been taking his passing pretty hard. Even though I didn't see him a lot, we texted almost every single day. Multiple times a day, in fact. Like, gosh, yeah, I mean, someday I would go like a day or two without texting him and vice versa. But then, like, one day we would text for hours. And he kept some strange hours. I call it hobo hours. Like banker hours. He kept hobo hours. So, and I work shift work, so I get random texts from him at like 1 in the morning or 3:30 in the morning. And if I was working, I would always we'd sit and text for an hour, And it was never about anything too serious. Over text, it was always like what he was into and how I was doing and stuff like that. And but I think at 3 in the morning sometimes he was bored and he'd be like, "Oh, my buddy Matt, he's probably up," and he would just shoot me a text, and half the time I would be up, and we'd just go back and forth. I want to tell. I know we're, me included, everyone's so bummed out about what happened, and I don't know any of the details, and I don't feel right asking his sisters any of the details. I did see that they posted that preliminary tests came back and there was no alcohol or drugs in his system, and I could have told you that. The first time I met him, I do like to drink beer once in a while. I'll admit that. But the first time I met him, we went down to the Cuyahoga Valley, and I took him out to lunch at the Winking Lizard down there in Peninsula, and I asked him. I said, "Hey man, I want to order a beer with my lunch." I go, "Is that okay? Like, I know you're like a recovering alcoholic and stuff, and I don't." He's like, "Oh, no, go ahead." He's like, it doesn't, I just can't do it anymore. And it doesn't, it's not like if you have a drink, I'm gonna, fall off the wagon or anything. So, but I did feel weird drinking around him. But it wasn't like he did mention a couple times, I'd have like when we were sitting out at the campfire in that one video, I had a beer, and he's like, "Man," he's like, "I wish I was healthy enough to be able to sit here and have a beer with you." And I'm like, "Well, I really find it that you're willing, you're strong enough not to give into it." And I don't even know if it was him being strong enough, that he was just, his body couldn't take it, and he knew it. But yeah, I'm getting a little emotional talking about all this. But anyways, all this stuff aside, I just wanted to tell maybe a couple funny uplifting type of stories about him that might make people smile and remember how awesome of a guy he was. And he really was. The guy that you saw in the videos was pretty much the way he was in real life. I always said to the people around me that in real life he was a little more quiet than what he is in his videos. I think he mentioned something about something to the effect that, kind of like the Mel McDaniel song. He doesn't say much, but when he does, it's more than most, or something like that. And it was true. Like, yeah, he was a little more quiet in real life, and I've told people, and he never let on to it in his videos, but he was a lot more fragile in real life. When I met him the first time, I was kind of blown away a little bit by just, the guy that he was on video, going to Alaska and doing this and doing that and hopping trains and going here. But when you met him in real life, he kind of struck me as being a little more fragile between his eyes and his ears. And yeah, he was a little more fragile in real life. And I know the past few months, his health has not been good. And I think that's one of the main reasons he wasn't out riding a lot in the past, probably year or something. He's been kind of fighting his health problems. And but I wanted to get to the funny stories, or the things that I kind of, when I met him and everything, that we connected like that almost from day one. I don't know what it is about me and him that we had a connection. I remember him telling me, he's like, I feel like I've known you my entire life. And I said, it's kind of weird because I feel the same way about you. It's like when you have an old friend and you haven't seen him for several years, and you meet up and you just leave, you pick up right where you left off, and you just start talking about things. That's the way he and I were from day one. And I can't explain that. I don't know what that is, but it was a real thing between him and I. And he felt it. He told me he did. And when he told me that, I was like, I kind of feel the same way about you. Like, I feel like I've known you forever. Like we've been friends in a past life or something, And anyways, one of the very first time I met him, he was in, I think, Willard. We had been talking for about a year before I actually met him. And he was in either Willard or Fostoria. And he wanted to either go to Willard or Fostoria because he was, his train stopped and there was just intermodals leaving out of there, and he couldn't get out of, I think it was Willard. And he wanted to go about another 45 minutes west to Fostoria to catch out over there. And he didn't have a way to get over there other than probably hitchhiking or whatever. And so he texted me and he's like, hey man, I'm over in Willard. Can you give me a ride? I don't even know if he asked me. Yeah, I think he just kind of hinted around about like wanting to get to Fostoria, being like, well, if I could make it to Fostoria, I think I could get out, but I'm probably going to be stuck here for a couple days. And I said, well, that's about an hour west of me. I'll come get you. I'll take you out to dinner, and then we'll go further west, and I'll drop you off, and you can catch out. And I think he went to Chicago from there. But so anyways, I told him I was headed his way. He told me where he was. I think it was like the Dollar General. And so I pull in there, and there he was, sitting right next to the Dollar General, and I said, "Shoestring," or something like that. And he looked up, and he came over, and we shook hands, and I said, "Well, I'm Matt. It's nice to finally meet you." And I said, I want to take you out to dinner before we go west. I go, and I don't know what kind of food they have in Willard, but I'm like, I'll take you anywhere you want to go for dinner. Wherever you want to go, whatever you're in the mood for. I don't care about the price. Just let me know where you want to go, and we'll do it. And he's like, He's like, you know what? I can't do a shoestring impression, but he was like, I want to go to Taco Bell. And I'm like, Taco Bell? And I'm like, are you sure? Like, we can go to like a nice Mexican restaurant. They got to have one of those. And he was like, no, Taco Bell. And I'm like, all right, I'll take you to Taco Bell. And I said, get anything you want, as many of them as you want. Get a couple to go, whatever you want to do. And so, yeah, we went to Taco Bell, and it was that would have been the summer of 2020, I think. And everyone had their masks on. So we got our food, and we sat on the tailgate of my truck and ate and bullshit. BS'd. And so we had our Taco Bell together. And I said, all right, well, I'm ready to take you a little bit further west. And so, yep, I took him over to Fostoria, I think, and dropped him off and shook his hand. And he signed, I had my battery pack, and he signed that for me. And I said, well, this is the first time I met you, but it ain't going to be the last. And he's like, oh, no, it isn't going to be the last. And so I think he went to Chicago from there, and that was, we texted quite a bit before that, but after that, like, we texted all the time. And then he came and stayed with me a few different times, I think. And but yeah, that was kind of like when I first met him, and then we kind of hit it off, and that was pretty cool. But yeah, a couple other shoestring facts that people might not know. Well, you might know this, but he loved birds. He was a huge bird guy. And I am also a huge bird guy. I got that giant feeder out back that holds like 300 pounds of feed. And every time he was here, he loved that. And he liked the fact that I like birds, and we would text about birds and that kind of thing. And he was also a huge Star Wars fan. I don't know if many people know that. I think he was more of a fan of the original trilogy, but he had seen all of the newer Star Wars stuff, and some of them he liked, and some of them he didn't like. Like, I don't think he thought much of some of the prequels, or the whatever the last three were, but he did like Rogue One, and he liked The Mandalorian, which I've never seen, but he always talked about The Mandalorian. And one funny thing is he told me, and you can look this up, it's actually really good, because I'm a pretty big Star Wars fan of the old stuff, but it's called, what is it? I think it's called Steve Vader. Steve Vader? Something Vader. And it's basically Darth Vader, and it's the guy that does the voice for the video games now. But back, and it's probably 10 or 15 years old, but it was kind of like a skit. And it's basically Darth Vader, and his name is, instead of Darth, it's Steve. And he manages a grocery store. and this is the kind of humor that he liked, that he told me about. I'm like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I got to watch this immediately. And I went down the whole YouTube rabbit hole. So Darth Vader manages this grocery store, and he has all these like punk kids working for him, and none of them respect him, and he's all like bummed out about not being one with the Force anymore. And it was just funny stuff. He loved that. And he also was a huge, and I don't know if he ever talked about this on on his channel at all that I can think of, but he was a huge space nerd, like NASA and like of the Apollo program. He could name every of the 12 astronauts that walked on the moon. You know, I know Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin, and if I really sat and thought about it, I could probably name 2 or 3 more. But he knew them all, and he knew every mission to the moon and what they did, and yeah, it's just, he had a pretty photographic memory with some of that kind of stuff. And when the space the James Webb Space Telescope came out, oh, we texted for weeks about that. He's like, oh, I'm so excited about that telescope. I can't wait till the pictures come out. They're supposed to come out next Tuesday or whenever it was. And I was like, oh, I was pretty excited about it too, because I'm pretty nerdy with that stuff. And it was the day that the first pictures were going to come out from the James Webb Space Telescope. And I said, hey, I saw the very first picture from the James Webb Space Telescope. You're not going to believe it. And he's like, oh, he bought it hook, line, and sinker. And I sent him a picture from Superman, the 3 convicts, what was it, Ursula, Non, and Professor Zod, or Lieutenant Zod, or General Zod. And they're in the Phantom Zone with the mirror. I said, look what they caught on the James Webb Telescope. I said, you're never going to believe it. And it was the picture of the mirror with the 3 Kryptonians from Superman on it. And he thought that was the funniest thing ever. And yeah, that was pretty funny. But that was the kind of stupid stuff that we would text back and forth all the time. And another thing that I loved about him was he was a huge movie buff. And I don't know, I've known some people that have been pretty good with movie quotes, but man, he was good with movie quotes. I have a couple videos of him and I watching, what was it, Killer Clowns from Outer Space, which I had never seen, but he already knew all the lines to it. And I got to watch Airplane with him. He loved that. I got to watch Naked Gun with him in here. That was amazing. And both, I think if you would have been a third party watching in on that, you'd have been just so annoyed, because it was just him and I just saying the lines in the movie before they even happened. It was funny. But yeah, he loved like stupid funny movies, and yeah, we just had a lot in common. Just, I don't know, it was, we just had a bond from like day one that I can't explain it. And there's been a few times here in the last couple weeks where I've seen something or saw something, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait to tell Shoestring about that. And I'm like, oh no. And then it like sinks in that I'm not going to hear from him again, you know? Because, yeah, it was at least a couple times a week I would see something that I was like, oh, I can't wait to tell Shoestring about this. Or whether it was something, you know, a movie or whatever it was always something. And in fact, one of the things we talked the least about was trains and hoboing. But the first time I met him, or the first time he was here, I should say, I did ask him quite a bit about doing that for as long as he did. And I think maybe one day I'll post maybe some videos of some other conversations we had, and just put it out there. I mean, none of it's anything mind-blowing or whatever, but I always felt weird about when he was here putting a camera in his face, and I just didn't want that to be like our relationship. Like, oh, Shoestring's here, let me get a video of you tying your shoes, or I just didn't want to do that to him. And he was, like I said, shy enough and a private enough guy outside of his videos that I wouldn't have felt right about that. So I usually let him bring it up if, you know, if he was doing something or whatever, and he'd be like, "Oh, let's make a video about it. Do you want to take a video now?" And I'd be like, "Okay, yeah, well, whatever." But yeah, one of the I think it was the first time he was here. This is kind of a fun story. Like, I knew who he was, obviously, and so do all you guys. He had a pretty big following on YouTube, but once you get outside of the train community and whatever, it's, you know, he's just another guy that walking down the street, you know. And that's the way I always treated him. I just treated him like he was one of my buddies from back home. And I didn't treat him like he was something special, you know. I just always thought of him as just like I said earlier in the video, just a friend that I've known forever. And so I wanted to show him the here in Medina, the main line running east out of town goes through. There's an overpass. The old B&O goes over top of it, and there's kind of a. It looks kind of like a tunnel, but it's all big stone blocks. And I wanted to take him down there and just show it to him, because he did like cool railroad stuff like that. And so we parked on the east side of town, and it's like, I don't know, half a mile, 3/4 of a mile down to the west side where that is. And we walked it, and there's one part where the tracks go over the road, and we're just kind of walking on the sidewalk, and there's a car that goes by, and I see the brake lights kick on, and then I see the reverse lights kick on, and he backs up, he's like, "Shoestring!" And it was some dude that watched his videos, and the guy got out of his car, and he went over and shook his hand, and the guy was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're here in Medina." And I actually see that guy around once in a while. I can't remember his name, but he's a big dude with a beard, and if he's watching, you know who you are. And so he got back in his car and took off, and we started going west again. We had probably another 1/4 of a mile to go, and I said, "How often does that happen to you?" He's like, a couple times a week. I said, "What do you think about that?" And he's like, he didn't like it. He said he did. He said I think he was kind of torn on it. I don't know if he ever said that, but the impression that I got was that he was torn on being famous, because, you know, he goes, I remember him going, "Sometimes I just want to go to the grocery store and not get recognized." And he goes, "Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't." But I think it had its benefits too. And he knew what those were. You know, if he was in a yard somewhere and somebody saw him around, they're not calling the bull on him, or they would just let him be. They knew he wasn't going to cause any trouble or whatever. And he did appreciate that fact. And sometimes I know he told me more than once that he was somewhere and he needed a ride, and he'd be standing there and somebody would stop and offer him a ride because they knew who he was. Like, he knew the benefits of it, but also he was kind of a shy, private person at the same time. So, you know, it's one of those things that he was well aware of. But anyways, these are a few of the thoughts I have on him. I've not stopped thinking about him since he went missing, and I feel terrible that I couldn't be down there to help look for him. But I'm really appreciative of the guys that put in the time and the the boots on the ground that went looking for him. I think we kind of all knew deep down that it was so out of character for him to be gone without his gear and his hat and his phone and his medication and his bucket and all that stuff that I don't know what happened to him. But I gotta think whatever did happen happened pretty quick after he went missing, and none of the looking or all that stuff, you know, was gonna help. But I'm so glad that he was found at least, and his family can have closure. And one other thing too, I'll just say about him, and like I said, maybe I'll make some of these videos from time to time about my experiences with him, because we had a pretty special relationship. But he loved his mom. He loved his mom a lot. And I know the first time I picked him up, he was like, "Oh, I got to call my mom and let her know I'm all right." And I think she was like, "You're some guy you met on the internet is gonna drive you somewhere." And she was like, "I've known this guy for a year, and I think he's gonna be cool, and don't worry about it." But once we were headed west, he called her and set her mind at ease, and yeah, I thought that was super sweet. Like, even the rugged hobo still loves his mom and lets her know that he's all right. And anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like I said, maybe I'll make a video or two once in a while when I'm being a little nostalgic about him. I am pretty emotional about the whole thing still. And I'm gonna miss him. You don't talk to a guy every day for 5 years and just have him gone and not miss the hell out of him, you know. One of the last times I talked to him, not one of the last, but it was about a month ago, I was like, "What are you doing for the eclipse, buddy?" Because like I told you, he was into space and all that stuff. I'm like, "Why don't you come up here to Cleveland? We're in the path of totality up here. Why don't you come up for that weekend, and we'll watch the eclipse?" And I think it was when he wasn't feeling real well, and he was like, he didn't want to commit to it. I don't want to say he brushed it off, but he was like, "Oh yeah, maybe, like, you know, let me see, blah blah blah." But yeah, when the eclipse came through on Monday, I couldn't help. Sorry about that. I had a little camera malfunction. But yeah, I was just saying, I was really missing him on Monday when that eclipse came through. It would have been cool to experience that with him. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to tell some fun stories and just remember him a little bit from my perspective as a friend, and not just as somebody that watched his channel. And it was funny because the last couple, 2-3 years, I watched most of his videos still, but when he was out riding, he sent me pictures and videos the whole time he was out. So it was like, when I watched his videos, it was like, I've already seen all this, and I already knew what he did and where he went, and yeah. So anyways, I'm going to miss him. Definitely going to miss him. But yeah, from time to time I'll make a little video like this, just remembering some of the funny stories as they come to me. But anyways, everybody, thanks for watching. I know we all miss him. I know his family misses him, and he was a larger than life character on Earth. I always kind of said to some of my friends that had no idea who he was, I'm like, he's like a real life, like John Henry or Paul Bunyan or one of these you know, characters from a fable or something, but in American folk hero, but in real life, like, you know, the guy sat right there many a times, and it's hard to explain that to somebody that didn't appreciate what he was all about, and I know you guys do. So anyways, thanks for watching, everybody. I hope these stories make you smile at least. I know they do me. He was a heck of a guy, and not just a YouTuber, but my friend. So, all right, everybody, we'll talk to you later.